This podcast you're about to listen to is an interview that I did with Charley Tichenor, the Facebook disruptor. And he has a crazy story from heroin addict and pizza boy to managing over $1 million a day for Nissan, and now he teaches how to do tons of this stuff. Charley's gonna break down what he calls his one campaign blueprint, how they're leveraging broad for massive scale, how they're being incredibly simplified and very focused with their advertising in a way that doesn't take 1 billion hours to manage. And then he shares his very strong feedback on some metrics like return on ad spend, ROAS, what so many of us in the advertising world know and love, and so many people flaunt it around. So please enjoy this episode with Charley Tichenor. Everybody, today I have Charley Tichenor, and he is known as the Facebook disruptor. And whenever I bring someone on that is like super nerdy and super talented, nerdy in a good way, and very talented, I get really excited because, especially when it's someone that I've actually followed for, you probably don't know this. I followed you for like 6 months now. I was first introduced to you by the founder of Zero Shoes, who I had on my podcast. I was at a marketing meeting at the round table with their whole marketing team. And he's like, have you heard of this guy named the Facebook disruptor? And I'm like, never heard of him. And this back in October of last year. And he tells me, you need to check this out. So we check it out. I get on your newsletter. I follow you on Instagram, and I've been watching all your stuff. And I'm like, I put you on my wish list of people to get on here, man. So I'm excited you're here. But for everybody listening, I'm just going to lay out the rap sheet real fast so you kind of lean in and listen here. Charley has over a decade of experience in Facebook ads. Oh, that's a lot of experience. Over $1 billion in revenue driven. He has a client list of different 8, 9-figure direct-to-consumer and some SaaS brands. He has worked with brands like CBS Television, Domino's, Nissan, Jamba Juice, and New Balance. I bet your dad is so proud. New Balance, man. You even got to do some stuff.
I was part of I don't know if you remember, about 5-6 years ago, New Balance tried to get younger.
Okay.
Like, it used to be like the Mall Walker brand, and then they tried to go to like late 20s, but I was behind that. We got into like 35, 38. But yeah, that was, at the same time I was doing Disney stuff, and I worked with Activision and, Levi's and Apple. And, I used to be,
wow.
I was supervisor of the LA office at Omnicom Performance Media, called Resolution Media. So 7-figure daily budgets for just a ton of evil international conglomerate companies. So it's been a lot of fun.
That's amazing. So now you call yourself the Facebook disruptor. Why do you call yourself that?
Honestly, it was originally CT the Disruptor. It was a Twitter account, because when I first got onto Twitter, because I was doing some stuff with D2C Newsletter and Pilot House, and I got a Twitter account and I hadn't had one. And I was just excited because I had, over the years before that, been banned from every Facebook group where people talk about ads because I was bad for business for every guru and their like nonsense funnels. And so when I finally made it back, I was like, I'm going to be able to talk to all the other people from the Disruptor group, because I was in the founding core 5-6 brands in the Facebook Disruptor group. 310 Nutrition, Purple Mattresses, Smile Direct Club, Movement Watches, and Match Group.
Nice. I'm wearing a Movement watch right now. I love that. Nice. That's awesome. Okay, cool.
And I was head up at 310 Nutrition at the time. But yeah, so I was part of the original core. And so I was just like, oh, cool. I'm going to meet up. I'm going to finally get the chance to talk to all these people again. And I realized that like none of them were public about it. But it took me like 3-4 months to realize that. And I had already basically been branded at that point. And I realized that the world had moved on from what I had seen in 2015, 2016 of all these people teaching really bad information. And so a lot of the things that I had brought were apparently really disruptive to bad thinking. And so I just kind of leaned into it. And to be fair, like it fit. And I try to say that as it's not there to be, I'm not trying to be, I don't want to be what I guess, argumentative or try to be contrarian. I instead want to focus on helping people think in a more productive manner than the myopic view that most media buyers have been taught to, because they were trained by somebody that doesn't know how Facebook works or don't care about business's bottom line as a standard operating procedure. And I think let's actually care about things that matter instead of the ego of the marketer. And that's going to make marketers a lot stronger and help prevent a lot of the damage that's been done by most marketers to most brands.
Wow. It's pretty crazy. I agree with I love that. I think that's great. I think there's just so much. The problem in the marketing world, because we're both in it, and you've been no longer than I, is the ego is like the largest thing. I can't stand it. So when I see you'll never see me in front of a car in an ad. You'll never see my ads are goofy, us like having fun and doing stuff and your stuff that I've seen is very similar. So I love that you've really stayed true to that. So something that I watched not too long ago, and I think it was like a week and a half or 2 weeks ago. So you released a video and you called it From Delivering Pizzas to Running Ads for Nissan. Yeah. And I know in that at some point, I'd love to for you to just take us back a little bit here. Because I know at some point you were a heroin addict, a pizza boy, and now you've gone on to not only work with big brands, but now teach people how to do the same thing. How did those worlds even connect? Can you just bring us through that story to where you are now?
Yeah. I mean, basically, soon after high school, I became a pretty big drug addict, went to college, got a gig as a touring musician. I did that thing. I was a radio personality on Sirius XM, and I was rewarded for that kind of partying, but I got really good at self-promotion to the point where other people paid me to help promote them. And, you learn a skill when you're a touring musician and a radio personality. And, I went from answering phones at a AM radio station, having my own college radio, to being an afternoon drive time host on Bubba the Love Sponge. And then the Hulk Hogan sex tape happened. That ruined my radio career. A bunch of people caught charges. And I basically fled Florida to move to LA. And
wait, hold on a second.
Yeah.
Let's just rewind real quick. What happened there? Hulk Hogan sex tape. And how did you get tied into that?
Tape. Bubba the Love Sponge filmed Hulk Hogan having sex with Bubba's wife, and they were in on it. It was like a Florida thing, whatever, and no judgment. But then leaked it to Gawker, and there was a huge scandal. And as a result, Hulk Hogan and Howard Stern were the underwriters of Bubba the Love Sponge's radio network on Sirius XM. It was an extension of the Howard Stern radio network. And as a result of that happening, they were just like, well, we're going to pull our funding. And I went from being an afternoon drive host with a couple million listeners around the world to chains on the door. And it was now a Howard Stern replay channel.
Wow.
And many other things had happened, but I basically had the choice of jails, institutions, or death. And I moved 2,500 miles and got sober.
Wow. That's crazy. Okay.
I started to do organic social media stuff for other things. And I got a job. My first gig was doing data entry at some illegitimate social media agency on Hollywood Boulevard for $10 an hour. And I ended up automating all my work. I ended up basically doing the work of 8 people in a couple of hours. I watched all of The Wire at my desk in about 2.5 months before I got fired. And I brought the biggest client with me. And I started a social agency just doing organic growth hacking. Ended up going on AMC's show, The Pitch. And I was part of their last episode. Once they put me on TV, they canceled the show. We won the episode.
They just saved the best for the last. That was it. They saved the best for last.
Yeah. They were like, no, you're done. You're done. Cut. Yeah, funding pulled. Who made and I'm not even on screen for that long. But so we won that. And then because of getting that business, my business partner at the time was also my attorney. And he had designed the paperwork. So basically the ink wasn't dry on that contract and I was fired. And I took the biggest clients with me again. And my biggest client at the time fired me because one day he put in $100 into Facebook to run ads. And he's like, dude, I spent $100 on ads. It did more for me than paying you $2,000 a month does. And he honored the contract, paid it out, but it was like, we're done. And the next day I put my credit card in Facebook and started promoting my band. And within 3 months I was running stuff for Jamba Juice and Viking River Cruises. Within 6 months, I was doing things for Jay and Silent Bob and Robert Rodriguez movies and, Carrie Gaynor anti-smoking stuff. And within 9 months, I was supervisor at the Omnicom office because literally having run ads for 9 months meant that I was one of the top 5% most experienced people. And like I had performance marketing chops at agencies doing multiple things. And I have an MBA and, I've got a couple college degrees because fun fact, if you go to college, I didn't realize the ramifications of student loans, but like I just kept getting paid. I just kept getting giant checks written to me for showing up to school. So I ended up collecting a whole bunch of a whole bunch of checks instead of having real jobs. But I just created a mountain of like student loan debt, which I've since paid off. But like that's how I kind of sustained myself, that and being a musician. But so I ended up showing up with like 3 college degrees, an MBA in business from the Harvard Business Review, and having more experience than everybody else in running ads on Facebook. And they were like, hey, we need somebody to manage like 7 figures a day for these big brands. And we need to do very specific things. And I had the ability to walk the walk and talk the talk and do scientific case studies. So I got put in role where basically 7 figures a day, no real overhead. And my bosses had no idea how to do what I was doing. And so it was the Wild West for a little bit. And that was a lot of fun. And I was a bad employee. Like I didn't know how to use Outlook. I was showing up in like band t-shirts and cowboy boots and ripped jeans. And like, I was like, I had a gig last night. I just show up in whatever I was wearing. Like,
that's amazing.
I was more eccentric than the creative directors at Shy a Day and all of those good guys. And, I bounced around from agency to agency. Basically, I'd work there for 6 to 9 months. I get fired. I get my boss's job at the spot next door. And eventually I went client side, vendor side, and really just had a huge, just very round experience to get me to that place. And now I've been in a spot where, over the last 5 years, I think I'm personally a partner in my 4th business that's going to go from like they brought me in doing $50K a month a year and a half ago, and now we do $1 million a week. Wow. That's the 4th time in the last 5 years I've done that, and I'm about to join my 5th one that's on a similar rate. And I've also grown my own stuff, and it's now it's not lucky, it's a process. And so I've really just tried to take what I've learned and make it readily accessible to people. And generally that is difficult for people to take in, but I look at it as from a business perspective. And that means that what I have to say comes from a different place. And that's just come from my background of having to make $1 million a day work is a lot different than somebody trying to keep a client that's spending $30,000 a month by looking better on a report so that somebody else gets fired, even though I'm not doing any decent work. And that just gives me a different perspective. Every
time I hear that's probably one of the craziest stories I've actually heard on the podcast, because I've heard some crazy, like from here to there, Zero Shoes, Steven Sashin came in, pitched on Shark Tank. They wanted all his business. He turned them down, and now he did 33 million last year, whatever it is. So like I hear stories like that, and I'm like, that's really inspiring. And then when you hear the ones that it's like, man, you were a pizza driver. You became a Sirius XM. You're busking.
Fired from Pizza Hut. Like that's how bad of a pizza delivery. I took 3 months and they fired me. Like that's how bad I was. And I had to make choices every day between like gas, food, and drugs. Like so, like I know what that looks like. And to be fair, like this summer I'm going to buy a place in Chelsea as my like second house. It's been 10 years. This is stupid. Like it is ridiculous. But it's not anything that like I'm not necessarily special or unique. So I'm just trying to make that accessible for everybody.
It's always inspiring to me to hear when someone hits that bottom of the barrel, when you hit that life-altering moment. And I feel that many people I had that moment for me, and that was like 6 years ago. Yours is really extreme to be in that position, man. But like when you have that, you feel backed in a corner. You have to choose. Am I going to fight? Am I going to leverage this pain, this fear, this everything that's going on to change my trajectory in a good way? Or am I going to let it just demolish me? And to see that you were able to do that, to move into where you're at, you're about to buy a new place. You have 4 going into, I think you said your 5th business. That's unbelievable. That takes a lot of mental fortitude to continue to do that, man.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm stubborn. I'll put it that way.
That's awesome. My wife would agree. I probably share similar tendencies, man.
I like it. Hey, it works for some people. You just got to figure out the social aspects after that.
I want to talk. So you have something that you call the One Campaign Blueprint. I would like to talk about that if that's okay. But before we do, though, I want to talk about mental fortitude. One of the greatest things, because I teach a lot of Facebook ads myself for e-commerce, and one of the biggest barriers I think to many people winning is mental fortitude. They trust their emotions and they don't trust the mathematics of the situation. They let their emotions get in. They start touching things. And there's something you said in a video that I wrote down that was really interesting to me. And you said, if you spend $1 million a day, you go to sleep and you make a mistake with a comma, that's a $50,000 mistake.
Yeah.
That takes a lot. Like, could you speak to like what type of mental fortitude do you need to have to be an advertiser and to win at advertising? Do you have any advice on that? Because I mean, $1 million a day, that's a lot, right? Like most people listening to this are not going to get to that point.
Sure.
But like it requires a lot of mental fortitude to do this. And that was like an extreme example you said that really just stuck out to me.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's something in there's a certain level of, I think good entrepreneurs have dumb confidence. And to be fair too, I think a lot of anybody that excels, great athletes, great musicians, like you can't be that good at something if you're not willing to say, yes, everybody knows this is everybody knows this, like you're not going to be whoever it is. But like, the only people that stick with it are the ones that ignore all of that. And like, when I first did it, the first like week or so, like I think I would never sleep more than like 30, 45 minutes at a time because I'm terrified. Right. And then it's sort of like, I think the fear is a lot more damaging emotionally, mentally, and like physiologically than actually having it happen. It's like getting punched in the face. The fear of getting into a fight is so much worse than actually getting hit. Like you get hit and it sucks. But the pending fear of that happening forever and just avoiding that is so much more damaging to who you are than it actually just happening and moving past it. And I was lucky enough that, in that first 7 to 10 days, I legitimately made a mistake. It was like a $53,000 mistake on an ad spend for like, I think it was Wheel of Fortune during Sweeps Week. And it was nothing other than just like, like a typo.
Wow.
But like, I mean, when you're spending $1 million a day, a typo can do that. You know what I mean? Yeah. Because that's also like nothing. Like if you're spending 10 million a week, $50,000, oops.
Yeah.
Oh, well, like it's, and that's staggering. But like, it takes that spot. So I've ultimately had these spots of what I like to do is address what is the biggest fear? What is the biggest obstacle? And then can I obsess over overcoming that and really trying to take on whatever that thing is so that I can move on to the next thing? Because the honest truth is there's always going to be the biggest fear. There's always going to be the biggest obstacle. And also, like, as a kid, like if my parents like, oh, I'm going to take away your toys or whatever it is, something else became the most important thing. Like no matter what it is, something will take that slot. But if you can address that biggest thing, every time you overcome it, you're going to get more and more momentum and take big leaps forward. And you're never going to be able to move mountains if you worry about the pebbles. If you're just trying to do all the small little things, you're never going to get anywhere.
Wow. Yes.
And, and I say, like, I just, I did another video about like $50K a month, how to get to that place. And what I realized when I was at the ad agency is the people I was working next to at Omnicom or wherever else, just because we mentioned them earlier, if they did a really good job, they might make an extra $1,000 a month next year. And that's amazing. But we made a 20% commission on a 7-figure daily spend. I was generating a couple $100,000 a day in revenue. And I was getting paid $75,000 a year.
Wow.
Like that puts perspective into just the magnitude of everything. And so for me, what that did was, it numbed me to the fear of the failure because the reward of embracing that and then overcoming it was so much more. So I just, part of the reason I was a bad employee is because I actively went out and did as many weird things as I possibly could with ridiculous budgets. Some of it I wasn't allowed to do. To be fair, it was probably a good move for them to move on. I wasn't a great employee there, but I learned a lot. And I've been able to share a lot of that with other people. So me being a bad employee there does more good than bad, I think. But the mentality of, I almost kind of got fatalistic. I was just like, I'm going to screw up. There are things that are going to go wrong and I can't plan for them. So let me put myself in the place where I have the most to gain. And then it becomes a game of just overcoming that biggest barrier. And that is massive. I don't know any successful people that don't get to that place by obsessing overcoming the bigger problems. The avoidance of solving the bigger problem doesn't get you anywhere.
That's good, man. There's always going to be the next biggest fear. And you know, I believe advertising, especially paid media buying, is such like a mental fortitude game that you level up as you go. Like I think that you ascend through levels. The first time you spend 1,000 a day or 2,000 or 3,000 or 5,000 or whatever that is, $1 million, you were like thrown in the deep end, it sounds like.
Yeah.
But for the rest of us that are like growing our businesses, you start to tear up through this, but you have to have mental fortitude. You have to trust the process. You also have to try to like break things to get to that next level, it sounds like. Which if we could, I'd love to, let's segue into the one campaign. Like if we're going to get a little tactical,
sure.
You've run a lot of ads and I've seen this, or you've run a lot of ad spend in your experience. And I have a lot of different campaigns going, a lot of accounts we manage, different types of campaigns, et cetera. But I've been seeing this ad for a course you have called the One Campaign Blueprint.
Yes.
You'd be willing to share that with us a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I mean, and at a very high level, basically what we're talking about is Facebook's a machine learning algorithm. So what are you teaching it? And if you are looking at Facebook as an investment portfolio, like an investment banker, why are you investing in places that aren't the best investment for your business? Maybe I want to invest where I'm getting 20% return versus a 5. So every time I invest to get a nickel, I'm losing 15 cents because I could be getting 20 back. Or maybe I want to invest in the 5 because I can do it at 10 times the volume of getting a 20% return back. Mm-hmm. And if Facebook's a machine learning algorithm, how do we design ourselves to best take advantage of doing that one job really well? And even at $1 million a day, I can tell you that I didn't run out of opportunity. And that's back when CPMs were like $2. So like,
woo. Oh man. The glory days, man.
And that was before, to be fair, too, there was no pixel. Like there was no such thing as a conversion campaign at the time. Like I remember when the pixel came in, and to be fair, that put more people out of work than iOS 14 ever will.
I feel like I'm just sitting in like my grandpa's living room, and he's just telling me stories about the good old days before the pixel and the good.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't advertising them. The pixel was around when I started doing it.
Gotcha. So then we get into, okay, well, if what we're going to do is say, I'm spending 300 a day, I'm spending 5,000 a day, I'm spending 50,000 a day. How do I make sure I'm spending as much of it as possible for the single best investment for my portfolio? Which is really just amplifying my business model. Jordan's is by no means the best selling, is by no means more than like less than 1% of Nike's revenue. Like the Big Mac is way down the list of where McDonald's makes their money. Right? Like the Corvette isn't what Chevrolet pays its stockholders with, right? Like that's not, but you lead with what gets people into your business. And so with that being said, I think so many people make the mistake of having, well, I'm going to promote 3 offers. Why? 2 of them are objectively worse for your bottom line. And I do see people saying, well, you've got to promote all the things in the store. And I know a guy that's very popular in this space that's come up with this concept of contribution margin by ad and all of this stuff. And my point to that is like, you have no idea because you also don't know where anybody is in their customer journey. You also are chasing a lot of things. And the reason your accounts are unstable, the reason your business is so dynamic is because you're feeding into it by you're trying to solve lack of confidence and instability by introducing more instability. Like the more creative testing you do, the more you're investing in things you don't have confidence in. Like you're hiring more employees so a larger percentage of your work getting done in your business today is by people on day one. That's not how you're successful.
Yes.
And if you know one thing makes you if 80% of your money comes from 20% of your product line, why are you promoting the other 80?
Oh,
it's a liability.
Hallelujah.
And that's not the role of Facebook. So in the campaign structure, how do we best leverage Facebook's AI to become a good business partner to Facebook? Because ultimately what we want to do is position ourselves to be the best business partner to Facebook so we get the highest quality impressions. So we show up as second in the newsfeed, not 10th. Like if you're if you're above the fold on Instagram, that's earned and it's cheaper than being 15 minutes into a doom scroll. So how do we become the best business partner so we're getting lower cost inventory that's higher quality, where we don't have to change things out all the time, because then also our machine learning algorithm is getting better and better at understanding how to treat this individual type of user. Which means also we're get better and better at our email flows and search and site optimization, because we're not changing the type of person walking into the store. So the more campaigns you have, inherently, the less stable and projectable your results are going to be. And the more futile any efforts are in optimizing your efforts after the click. So like if you have 5 campaigns running, it is infinitely more difficult to fix what happens after the click in your business than if you have 1. So with that being said, what I teach in that is really how to get down to that one thing, what that can look like. And I'll give it a sneak peek. This is like my famous, at this point now, like sticky note. I had some guy come to my house. He's like, can I take a picture with the sticky note? And I was like, yeah, sure. So this is our one campaign. We have one ad set that has our winning post IDs. Proven constants. They might not be the best ads in the world, but they're the ones that earn the most spend, that have the most stable output. And we also know where they sit in the funnel by measuring their CPMs and their frequency. We know that some of them are prospecting, some are retargeting, etc. Then we have 1 or 2 dynamic creative tests following 3-2-2 method, which is something else we can get into at another time. We might not have enough time today, but Google 3-2-2 or ask ChatGPT. Apparently it's in there now, which is fun. It's nice to know that I've contributed to ChatGPT. And the idea is these are all targeting broad, so age, gender, location, and it's a CBO. And so basically any ad that gets delivery has earned that delivery based on the meritocracy of the end user experience. How good am I as a business partner to Facebook? And then if I'm a good business partner by giving people content they want to see, and that positively moves the needle across my entire business, my unit economics of the acquisition of revenue, then it's good. If it doesn't, then it's bad. And the more complicated your ad account, the less likely you are to be able to point to any one ad and say, well, the ROAS on this is great, the CPA on this is great. And I'll say, great, what happened to your bottom line because of that ad? Well, like, I can't know because I'm running all this other stuff. Like, okay, so what you told me is you're spending a lot of money and have no idea what anything's doing to your bottom line. That to me sounds terrifying. Right? Like if I'm spending $10,000 a month and that really matters to me, if I'm spending $10,000 a day and that really matters to me, and you can't tell me the impact of any one of those investments on my overall efficiency as a business on the acquisition of revenue, then what are you doing? Because like you telling me that you have no idea what you're doing, and you're trying to just kind of measure these amorphous things in some way that you can't describe to me. So as a business owner, I'm looking at it and saying, I'm giving you my money to manage what's going on, and you can't tell me what happens as a result of it. To me, that is a negligent financial manager. And sadly, that probably represents 95% of people running Facebook ads, which is why 90% of ad agencies fail 90% of their clients.
Yeah.
So the one campaign blueprint talks about that stuff. And in Disruptor School and the Facebook Ads MBA program, we get so much deeper because that's easy to set up. It's now, what do we do with that information? Because Facebook is software, so it works the same for everybody. That is the most efficient way of managing your ad account like an investment portfolio to leverage machine learning for stability, where you have an appreciating asset, so your ads only get better if you don't touch them. Like literally, if you do nothing, it'll just get better over time. And then how to strategize around what tests to run. And then all of the other things. Now that Facebook is 45 minutes a week, what are you going to do with the rest of your business and the rest of your time? So like that's what it's all built around. So the one campaign sort of teaches you that introductory piece. Disrupt School says, all right, how do we do all of that plus all of the other things in the business? Like, and we have courses in there for master classes in there from like Sarah Levinger on consumer psychology and stuff from this guy, Glenn Rudin, about brand positioning, me on PSM, which is what you should actually be measuring, not ROAS or silly things like MER and contribution margin, whatever. And we're also getting stuff in from Buddy Raoul. It's going to teach like Google Ads, Google search for Facebook marketers. And how Jesse DeBear from Mute 6 is teaching like how to do onboarding as an ad agency. So all the people that I know that are excellent, you get to learn from all of them about how to do all the things now that Facebook is easy. Because Facebook itself is extraordinarily easy and simple. And if you don't feel that way about it, it's because the people teaching you how to use it fundamentally don't understand how it works, or the way that they're defining success isn't aligned with what you need from the investment. And I don't know that in most situations that's not out of neglect or malice. I think it's a lack of overall exposure to the impact of your work. And just, I've been in situations where you literally, like, when you're spending $1 million a month, $1 million a week, $1 million a day, and you're not the only person at the table spending, and there's like Deloitte on the other side of the table, you need to have a really good answer that's stable enough that they don't need you. Otherwise, you're never going to be able to exit the business. And all you really ever did was build yourself a day job where you're going to work harder and harder and harder and bring home less and less and less. Because I know plenty of people running 8-figure businesses that take home a lot less than I do. And a lot of other people do that have just a simple system that produces a high upside. So I think it's somewhere in that is sort of what we talk about and how to take a look at things.
It's really interesting. Every time I talk to someone who's like in our world and ecosystem, like what we live and preach and do, it's always exciting to see overlap. So like one thing that I saw, there were two steps that I had read on your one campaign blueprint that you talk about is you say step 1, stop wasting time with targeting, let the ads do it for you. And then step 2 is to run traffic to the lowest cost audience. It's interesting because like we've been teaching for so long and telling our people, like it used to be you go super mediocre, crappy ad, like whatever, just lob it out there to a super niche audience and you can gain some traction. And now we've seen a shift to where you need great ads to larger, broad, and you start to see, let the AI, you let the machine learning start to work in.
Yeah.
Is that your belief as well? So is that like where you're in line with?
So that change happened in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
So for the last 4 or 5 years, that's been the standard. Before 2018, Facebook operated like Google Display, where it was random distribution within an audience. So you had to target to make sure the right people saw your ads. In 2018, Facebook brought in widely available something called advanced matching, which allowed you as the advertiser to leverage everybody else. So if you're running a lead campaign, it's going to leverage everybody else that fires a lead pixel. If you're doing e-commerce, everybody else that adds the cart, everybody else that views products, what's the metadata on that product? For instance, when I was running New Balance, we found at scale, 2/3 of the money we spent where it was our business's first impression with the customer was somebody who had abandoned cart in the last 7 days at one of our competitors. The idea is not that you have to create a funnel, because you can't. The average customer journey is decades long. The idea is that you need to earn the attention when somebody is making that decision on their own right. You need to earn that place in their customer experience. And so ads do the targeting, because if you put in no parameters other than age, gender, location, Facebook's going to show that ad to the person that most wants to see it. That's going to have the best estimated action rate. So if the type of attention that you're buying isn't good for your business, the ad isn't good enough. Or the way you monetize that attention isn't good enough.
So if you launch into a broad audience like this, because I can hear someone listening right now saying, Charlie, I've launched abroad, I've done exactly that, and I haven't seen traction within the 3 to 7 days. Like, haven't gotten any. I've got no purchases. Insert whatever. What would your response be to that? Is it do you think it's the ad then in that scenario?
Yeah, I think 3 things. Number one, what happened to the rest of your business when you did that? Half the time I have a conversation with people like, man, my business is great. If I can just make Facebook work, it's going to be awesome. It's like, well, what happened? Well, we did X, Y, and Z. We've been trying the broad now for like a month. It's just not working. I'm not seeing any sales. Like, but when you started broad, did you start to earn a lot more money? Maybe your attribution isn't there, but as soon as you went to broad, your actual organic search went through the roof. Your direct on Google Analytics went through the roof. Your search volume on Google went up. The performance of your organic social improved. Facebook is a business model amplification device. It just says whatever you're doing, it's throwing more volume into whatever you're doing. So I don't care if my results look worse on Facebook, because that doesn't matter. The platform level performance means nothing. What matters is money in, money out. And so half the time that people say that, what they're really saying is Facebook's attribution isn't showing good sales on this, but my business is doing better. And so my thing is, why are you going to stop the thing that's helping you be more successful?
Yeah, that's good.
I think most people fall into one thing. They ask the wrong questions, they value the wrong metrics, and they define success in the wrong way. And so here they're defining success by valuing the wrong metric. The CPA of the ad, the ROAS of the ad, like that doesn't matter. That has nothing to do with business success. The other thing is, if you've been running interest groups and lookalikes and retargeting, the 2016 model of how to run ads, the thing that's been obsolete for 5 years, and you launch broad, you're not good at making broad ads, and you've trained the machine to need those training wheels. So you have to invest in teaching your employees how to do a different job better. And so don't abandon it right away. Start it at some manageable level. And then as it begins to outperform the worst thing that you have, let it take a larger percentage of your media spend. And it's at that point, it is legitimately just a numbers game on time until the broad is the only thing you'll ever need. And at that point, you can abandon targeting holistically forever. Sometimes that takes 2 weeks. Sometimes that takes 2 months. And there's nuances to it because you're probably running multiple types of ads to multiple parts of the funnel. You're probably promoting multiple things. You're probably leveraging other stuff. And your media mix probably requires you to take advantage of that. So when you start going broad, you're not taking advantage of search in the same way. And your emails might perform differently. But you got really good at doing the job the wrong way. Doesn't mean when you do it the right way, you're going to be better. You have to learn how to do that. And I think most people say, well, I'm running lookalikes and I'm running broad and my lookalikes just perform better. And I'll ask them, well, what happens if you turn off the lookalike? If you stop stealing the high performance stuff in an audience that will depreciate, because that audience will eventually fatigue, which broad will never do. And you started to invest that learnings into making broad better. Instead of investing it into an asset to help it depreciate faster. Like a 1% lookalike is actually a 99% exclusion based on data that you probably don't trust. Like, do you legitimately trust Facebook's data on targeting on, like, do you think it's complete on the purchase information or like website visitors or any of that stuff? Like, do you legitimately want to exclude 99% of people that want to see your content? Because the data point that you don't trust, and you're going to find a 2 million person audience that looks like a data set that you don't trust to exclude the vast majority of people and expect that to be, as a depreciating asset, a good investment. Like, you're never going to get rich by buying stocks high and selling them low as a standard operating procedure, but that's how most people run their ads, and that makes no sense.
You know, it's interesting you say that. I was going to say, so our experience with broad, is that the accounts that we work in that have some people, I hate the word seasoned pixel. I don't
Sure.
really like it, but you get the idea, right? A lot of people, the more we've run, the more spend we run, the larger the stacks of whether it's stacking things, the broader the audiences you can go until you get to that openness of it. I call them open, you call them broad.
Sure.
So like, it is interesting. You put it in a good way though, that like if you were to train your employees one way and then suddenly the next day you just switch to the other, there's going to be a negative result of that, right? So you have to like almost train them in. You're going to take these two or whatever. We're going to do a mass training. We're going to slowly train them into the new way. It's an interesting way of putting it. I've never been able to put it like that because we do see that I will say that some like newer brands that don't have, they're starting from scratch, let's say, nothing in their pixel broad. I've seen it annihilate them. Like and it could be their ads it could be their ads. And sometimes when they go a little bit more refined, they get that initial traction, but over time, we see broad and larger, like even stacks of audiences, like 238 million. It's pretty much the whole US if you stacked everything together. You can go, we've seen broader really work over time. That's a really interesting way of putting it though. And
yeah, I mean, it's ultimately an investment. Like, do you want to run your business on depreciating assets that increase your cost of advertising over time? Or do you want to invest in an appreciating asset that makes it more and more stable and requires less and less management so you can work on what happens after the click?
Wow.
One of those is infinitely more powerful. And one of them will eventually, if you carry it out to the nth degree, make it so you can't advertise on the platform.
That's an interesting
It's a zero-sum game as far as I'm concerned.
That's an interesting perspective on that. I like that. That's great. One thing you've said several times now, and I've seen your t-shirts and your perspective on ROAS. Let's talk about that a little bit because ROAS is flaunted like, oh, we get a 16 or a 10 ROAS or whatever, and they probably sell like one $50 product for $5 in daily ad spend. What's your hang up in issue with ROAS?
Sure. Well, let me ask you this. What is ROAS?
Other than return on ad spend?
Yeah, but like how are you defining it?
Just simple revenue divided by ad spend.
Okay. So it's attributed revenue, which, to be fair, we're not getting attribution credit for everything, and multiple channels are taking credit for that sale. So it's non-incremental, highly duplicitous revenue that's not 100% accurate based around the average order value of a customer. And somebody could spend 200 today, they could spend 20, they could spend 2,000. So you can't control the AOV and you have no confidence in the data set. Divided by the spend today that it took to get the transaction, but how much did you spend to get that customer? Was it 5 cents? It could be. Was it $700 because you've been targeting them for 6 months? You have no idea. And then basically, so now you're using that as a data point to say, well, Facebook's bringing getting this credit, but is that actually even good for you? I've seen so many businesses get worse and worse and worse as the ROAS goes up because they're chasing profit margin on Facebook, but it's not incremental. And then they say, well, you can't really measure incrementality and attribution, this and that. I'm using different windows. None of that matters. That has no bearing on any actual business success or performance. Before digital marketing, people spent plenty of money, and it had nothing to do with a pixel, nothing to do with credit for the sale. Yeah. When you buy a car, it has nothing to do with the salesperson on the lot. But like, that's not why you walked into Kia today. You know what I mean? Like, so if the numerator is a number that is not absolute, that you can't control, that is not incremental, that you don't have confidence in, and you're dividing it by a number that doesn't give you actionable insight for future actions. At best, it's a retroactive efficiency measurement that we can't trust. So if neither part of the fraction is actionable data, why are we doing it? And at the end of the day, like, why are we even looking at ROAS anyway? It's to pick what ad to run, pick what ad set to run, what campaign to run. That's not how we should be managing the platform anyway. Like, we need to know, does this ad get more spend? When it gets more spend, what happens to the bottom line of my business across all marketing channels? Well, that has nothing to do with ROAS. There's plenty of times where the ROAS goes down because you're feeding top of funnel. Now you're searching direct and organic and email and everything climbs. So that's great. My point is, ROAS itself is a fictitious number built to help digital marketing companies take more credit for everybody else's work, and it's not actionable. I think if you focus on just chasing it, you can make your report look good. And if you're still in the game as a business evolves and just gets better, you're a rain man doing the rain dance at a used cars lot long enough for it to actually start raining. And in my book, that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah,
because
so some interesting perspective. So one thing I say all the time is I say advertising is the tide that raises all boats. So like email looks really good when ad spend goes up, organic looks really good, direct, all those things you said, definitely agree on that. As far as like making decisions within the ad account though, how do you what's your preferred way of making decisions with it, at least on the ad level? Like it holistically will rise revenue, but what is that thing that makes me say kill it, trim it, stack it? Like what is that metric you primarily look at then?
Did it earn spend? Or more importantly, if it earned spend, how did the media mix of spend change? And did my overall performance improve?
How do you define the performance?
Blended CPA, profit margin per day, acquisition, whatever the business objective is. So am I trying to acquire new customers? Am I trying to improve acquisition of revenue volume? Am I trying to improve top line, bottom line, whatever that is? As my investment portfolio changes, meaning the amount of spend that every ad gets evolves, is that good or bad for me? And if something getting more spend is net bad for my bottom line, well, I know it's bad for me. My bad ad that gets all the spend might be the reason that my Google search is so high. That good ad that gets all the spend might not ever be scalable. And as soon as I try to isolate it, it breaks because it's only good as the 12th touch, but it's getting enough volume because of everything else. So yeah. And if your ad account is not simple enough to make that insight, then you're setting yourself up to not be able to take actionable. You're not able to take action on the data that you see. So I would say your ad account architecture is a liability to the success that you want to have because you've set it up in a certain way where you're not able to actually point to the net impact of any dollar spent in any place. And again, if you can't tell me the impact of my investment portfolio on my bank account, why am I giving you any money at all?
That's good. I want to just kind of to close here, just be respectful of your time.
Sure.
A few different takeaways that I kind of have in here that I think is worthwhile, and please expand upon these as I kind of add these. So the first thing I've kind of seen here is that there's always going to be another fear. So as you're going into advertising, as you're growing your business, there's always going to be that next level you have to break through that you have to have mental fortitude for. The second thing I believe, or that I've seen, and you've talked about, is that simplicity is better than simplicity over complexity. Too many people are super complex, really diverse, burning themselves out in a lot of different areas, and they're wondering why nothing works. And then the last thing you said was really good. Is just you said net impact, blended CPA. Some will look at MER. Some are going to look at blended CPA. If no one knows what those are, go Google those.
I would say MER is another fictitious thing that matters that has no bearing on anything. It's a fancy version of ROAS. MER has no impact on the efficiency of future acquisition. You can't take a marketing efficiency ratio and then project that out because tomorrow the unit economics of attention are going to change. So that also lacks any actionability, just like ROAS does. It's a higher level, so it's a higher quality lie, but it's also ultimately at its core the same ego-based metric that doesn't improve anybody. Like you'll never watch Shark Tank and say, "What's your MER?"
Yeah.
You'll never see anybody say that. And they'll like that because that doesn't matter. Like a good MER is completely dependent on 1,000 other things. And honestly, answering those 1,000 other things makes the question of MER completely useless.
One thing they do ask is, how much does it cost to acquire a customer? That is one thing that they say.
Yeah, that's your CPA. Done. How much does it cost to produce your product? That's your COGS. How much is the customer worth? That's LTV. Boom, there's your PSM. How much more can you spend to acquire a customer at scale? That's the only question you need to ask. That's profitable scaling margin. And I've got an entire masterclass on that in Disruptor School. So you can run your business like it was a Shark Tank inside of your school instead of some 24-year-old kid that wants to decide whether or not they want to do this with the rest of your life and giving them all the money for the future of your growth and like struggling when it doesn't work out because you've trusted somebody that has no idea how business works, that has been taught to value their ego over your bottom line. And oh, shocker, like it's not good.
You just described 98% of marketing agencies.
Yeah. And it's not a slight. There are very good ones out there. It's just you got to know what to care about. But yeah, dude, thank you so much. My handle's down over here. It's at CT the Disruptor. You can also check me out at disruptorschool.com. Follow me on all the things. I'm literally on every social media platform, posting multiple times a day. And I'm wide open to any questions that anybody has. And if you disagree with anything that I say, you have an alternate take, please challenge me and have that conversation because that's how I get better. And like, I'm very open to it and I love it. And as much as I give out, I'll take, and we'll go out for sushi afterwards.
I love it. One final thing I'm going to close on, and this is actually a quote from you, Charley. In a recent video, you said, ultimately, I should be dead right now. So every day is a gift and I try to give it back. And I appreciate you, man, for giving this back to our audience, for giving this to me, man. I appreciate you. If you guys don't follow Charley, you need to. He is level 100% every single video, and I appreciate that. So, man, thanks for being here. Everyone, you've been listening to the E-Commerce Alley podcast, produced behind the scenes of the legendary Dylan Count, and we'll see you in the next video.